The first time I made Marcus breakfast, he told me I didn't have to. The 100th time, he didn't say anything at all. That's how expectations calcify. Silently, one morning at a time, until you can't remember when obligation replaced choice. My name is Amara, and I'm a senior financial analyst who manages 8-figure portfolios before most people finish their first coffee. But at 5:47 a.m. on a cold November morning in Chicago, I wasn't thinking about the Henderson merger presentation that could make my career. I was thinking about whether Marcus liked his eggs scrambled with cream or milk. Cream. Always cream. His mother, Patricia's way. The bedroom was dark. Our brownstone holding on to the night the way it held on to everything. Heat, cold, the particular silence of a marriage that looked perfect on paper. Marcus slept the sleep of the unburdened, one arm stretched across my side of the bed. He'd reach for me sometimes in his sleep, a gesture that used to feel romantic. Now, it just felt expected. I moved through my morning routine. Shower, the expensive skincare regimen, Patricia's Christmas gift, accompanied by thoughts about maintaining yourself. Makeup applied with precision in the bathroom's unforgiving light. Not too much, she'd mentioned once. You don't want to look like you're trying too hard, as if my face was a negotiation I could lose. Professional armor, slate gray skirt, cream blouse, understated jewelry. The costume of competence I wore to Morrison and Webb, where my financial models had earned the firm $3.2 million last quarter alone. The kitchen was my first stage of the day. Scrambled eggs with cream, not milk. 4 strips of turkey bacon. Sourdough toast, diagonally cut. Fresh squeezed orange juice, which meant buying oranges twice weekly because Marcus could taste the difference while I'm from the carton. French press coffee from that boutique place in Lincoln Park that charged $22 per pound. My breakfast? A protein bar eaten during my 8:30 a.m. call with Tokyo. Marcus appeared at 7:15. Right on schedule, already suited for his corporate law practice, hair damp, scrolling emails, inhabiting his day before it officially began. "Big day?" he asked, sitting down to the plate I'd already prepared. "The Henderson presentation. I've been building the merger scenarios since August." I poured his coffee, the motion automatic. "If it goes well, Robert's hinting at the VP track." "That's great, babe." He cut into his eggs, eyes still on his phone. Then, casually, as if mentioning the weather, "Mom's coming for dinner tonight. Can you make that pot roast she likes?" My hand paused on the coffee pot. "Tonight?" "Marcus, I told you, this presentation runs until 6. Then there's the reception. I won't be home until 8 at the earliest. Just use the slow cooker before you leave. It practically makes itself." He smiled at me. That easy smile that once made my stomach flip. Now it just made my jaw tighten. "She's been asking to see us." You know how she is. I knew exactly how Patricia Davis was, how she'd built her late husband's small insurance business into something formidable while raising Marcus alone. How she'd put him through Columbia law, how she'd bought us this brownstone, our names on the deed, her opinions in every room, how every visit felt like an inspection I was perpetually failing. "I'll handle it," I said, because that's what I always said. Marcus finished breakfast in 8 efficient minutes, rinsed his plate, his single domestic gesture, and kissed my cheek. "You're amazing. Kill that presentation." The door closed behind him. The apartment settled into silence. Just me, the radiator's rhythmic clank, and the slow cooker sitting empty on the counter. Like an accusation. I checked my phone. Jasmine had texted, "Today's your day. That VP spot has your name on it. Go show them what you're worth." What you're worth. I looked at the slow cooker, then at my presentation folder, 3 months of work that could reshape my career. Then at my reflection in the kitchen window, a woman in professional armor, backlit and ghostly, caught between 2 versions of herself. Something small shifted in my chest. Not anger yet, just a question I'd been too busy to ask. When did I become the person who always says yes to everyone else's expectations, and maybe to my own? I grabbed my coat, my presentation materials, my carefully packed lunch, and I walked past the slow cooker without touching it. I told myself it was an accident, that I'd simply run out of time, forgotten in the rush. But the truth? I'd made a choice. I just didn't know yet what it would cost me. The Henderson presentation was flawless. I stood in the Morrison and Webb conference room, facing 12 partners and the Henderson family's 3-generation leadership team, and I dismantled every objection before they could voice it. My financial models were airtight. My risk assessments anticipated variables their own team hadn't considered. When James Henderson Sr. asked about the Q3 projections, I had 3 backup scenarios ready, each more conservative than the last. "Ms. Okonkwo," he said when I finished, using my maiden name. I'd kept it professionally, though Patricia had opinions about that too. "This is the most thorough merger analysis we've seen in 20 years of acquisitions." Robert Chen, my managing director, caught my eye across the table. The look said everything. "You just secured your VP track." I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt my phone buzzing in my pocket. I already knew who it was. The reception afterward was where careers were really made, handshakes and small talk that translated into future opportunities. I was discussing market volatility with Henderson's CFO when my phone buzzed again. Then again. I excused myself to the restroom and finally looked. Marcus, 6:47 p.m. "Mom's here. Where's dinner?" 5 words. 5 words that assumed I'd dropped everything. 5 words that didn't ask about my presentation, didn't acknowledge that I told him I'd be late, didn't consider that maybe, just maybe, his mother's comfort wasn't my emergency. I scrolled down. 7:03 p.m. "Amara, she's asking about the pot roast. Are you on your way?" she's asking. As if Patricia's question was a command I was obligated to answer. 7:28 p.m. "This is embarrassing. Can you at least respond?" Embarrassing. For whom? Not for the man who'd invited his mother without confirming I could cook. Embarrassing for him, because his wife wasn't performing on cue. Then Patricia's message landed. "Patricia, 7:31 p.m. "Dear, Marcus says you're running late. No worries, I brought some things from the deli. We'll discuss meal planning later." I read it 3 times, parsing the layers. No worries? But there were worries. That's why she'd mentioned it. I brought some things. The rescue mission, positioning herself as the solution to my inadequacy. "We'll discuss meal planning later." That phrase, not "we'll talk" or "let's coordinate." Discuss meal planning, like I was an employee whose performance needed review, like my career achievement that day, closing a deal that would generate millions, was less important than pot roast. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The same woman who'd commanded a boardroom full of executives now looked small, caught between fluorescent lights and obligation. Jasmine found me there 10 minutes later. "You good? You just landed the biggest deal of the quarter and you look like you're about to throw up." "Family dinner," I said. "I forgot to cook." She blinked. "You forgot to—" "Amara, you were here until midnight yesterday. You've been prepping this presentation for months. His mother's visiting." Jasmine's expression shifted from confusion to something harder. She'd met Patricia once at the firm's holiday party last year. Once had been enough. Let me guess. She has thoughts about your priorities. She has thoughts about everything. I turned on the faucet, splashed cold water on my wrists, an old trick for calming anxiety. "I should go. I'm already late." "Or," Jasmine said carefully, "you could stay. Networks celebrate the fact that you just proved you're the smartest person in this building. Let Marcus handle his mother for once." The suggestion felt revolutionary and impossible in equal measure. I went home. The brownstone's lights were on when I arrived at 8:43 p.m., glowing warm against the November darkness. Through the dining room window, I could see them, Marcus and Patricia, seated at the table I'd inherited from her first house. Even from outside, I could read the body language, his, apologetic, hers, Resigned, the tableau of disappointment waiting for me, eating. I took a breath and opened the door. There she is, Patricia said, her smile perfectly calibrated. Not quite warm, not quite cold. The career woman. She'd set the table with deli containers, roasted chicken, potato salad, coleslaw, arranged on my good serving platters as if to suggest how it should have been done properly. Patricia herself looked impeccable as always, silver hair in a neat bob, pearls, cashmere cardigan in dove gray. At 63, she carried herself like someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I'm so sorry," I started, the apology automatic. The presentation ran long, and then there was a reception. "Of course," Patricia interrupted gently. Marcus explained, "These career demands, they're so unpredictable." She said, "Career demands," the way someone might say unfortunate affliction. Marcus stood, kissed my cheek. "Mom brought dinner." "It's fine," but his eyes told a different story. "Why did you make me look bad?" We sat. Patricia served the food she'd brought, playing hostess in my home. The chicken was dry. I said it was delicious. "So tell me about this presentation," Patricia said, passing the potato salad. "It must have been terribly important." The words were innocuous. The subtext was a minefield. "It was the Henderson merger," I said carefully. "I've been leading the analysis team. It's one of the firm's biggest deals this year." "How wonderful!" "And they couldn't manage without you for one evening?" She took a delicate bite of chicken. "I'm sure they have other analysts." "Mom," Marcus said, a half-hearted warning. "I'm just saying, sweetheart, that there's a balance." "Your father, God rest him, he worked very hard too, but he always made time for family dinners. He understood what mattered." I set down my fork with deliberate precision. This presentation could determine my promotion to vice president. "Vice president," Patricia repeated, as if testing the weight of it. "More hours, I imagine, more travel, more evenings like this." She looked at Marcus, then back at me. "You two have been married how long now?" 3 years? At your age, I'd think you'd be considering other priorities." There it was, the elephant she'd been circling since our wedding. Grandchildren, or more specifically, my failure to produce them on her preferred timeline. "We're not ready," I said, a conversation we'd had 17 times. "Readiness is a myth, dear. You're never ready. You just do it." Patricia dabbed her mouth with a napkin. "But of course that requires someone being home." Children need stability. They need a mother who's present, not chasing promotions at 8 o'clock at night. The room contracted. Marcus studied his plate. "Patricia," I said, my voice level despite the anger building in my throat. "I work because I'm good at what I do. Because I built my career from nothing. Because you don't trust Marcus to provide?" She tilted her head, her expression sympathetic. "Dear, I understand. Modern women, they're taught not to depend on anyone. But Marcus makes a very good living. You could consult part-time, work from home. You'd still be using that expensive education, but you'd also be building a home life." "I don't want to work part-time." "No?" Patricia's smile thinned. "Then what do you want, Amara? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you want your career and a marriage, but you're not willing to do the work required for either one." The accusation hung in the air, sharp and cruel. Marcus finally spoke. "Mom, that's not fair." "Isn't it?" She turned to her son. "When was the last time you came home to a proper dinner? When did you last have friends over? Because your wife had time to entertain. I raised you to expect a partner, Marcus, someone who contributes to building a life, not just a bank account." I stood up. My hands were shaking. "A real wife cooks," Patricia said softly, and the words landed like a slap. "A real wife makes her home a sanctuary. She doesn't leave her husband scrambling to explain why there's nothing on the table." Get out, I said. Silence. Amara, Marcus started. Get out. I looked at Patricia, this woman who'd given me nothing but criticism wrapped in concern, who'd spent 3 years trying to sand down every edge that made me myself. This is my home. My name is on that deed too, and I'm asking you to leave. Patricia stood slowly, gathering her purse with theatrical dignity. I see. Well, Marcus, I'll call you tomorrow. Perhaps when your wife has calmed down, she'll understand I was only trying to help. She walked to the door, paused. My son deserves better than leftovers and excuses. Think about that. The door closed. The brownstone settled into awful silence. Marcus stared at me like I'd become a stranger. What the hell was that? And I realized, standing in Patricia's kitchen wearing Patricia's expectations like a shroud, that I'd finally reached my limit. The only question was, what came next? What the hell was that? Marcus repeated, his voice rising. You just threw my mother out of our house? She insulted me, I said, my voice eerily calm. In my own home. After I worked a 12-hour day. She was trying to help. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times when he was frustrated. She brought dinner. She set the table. She did what you were supposed to do. What I was supposed to do. I repeated the words slowly, tasting each one. Tell me, Marcus, what were you supposed to do today? He blinked. What? You knew she was coming. You invited her. What did you contribute to this dinner besides a text message asking where the food was? That's not... I was at work. So was I. I moved to the sink, started scraping Patricia's deli chicken into the trash. The motion felt good, decisive. I was closing a multi-million-dollar merger, but somehow that's less important than pot roast. Don't twist this around. Marcus followed me to the kitchen. This isn't about the presentation. This is about you being part of a team, a marriage team. A team, I said softly, implies equal contribution. I contribute. I make partner track at one of the best corporate law firms in Chicago. I pay half the mortgage. Your mother pays the mortgage. It was her wedding gift, remember? I turned to face him. And yes, you make good money. So do I. But somehow, my income is just extra. My career is a hobby I should be willing to sacrifice. Tell me how that's teamwork. Marcus's jaw tightened. You know what? Fine. You want to keep score? Let's keep score. I don't ask you to do anything I wouldn't do. Really? I pulled out my phone, opened my notes app. Let me show you something. I'd started tracking it 6 months ago, when Patricia had made another comment about my domestic contributions. Not out of spite, out of curiosity. I wanted to see if my perception matched reality. Last month, I read aloud, I cooked dinner 23 times. You cooked twice, both times takeout you picked up. I did laundry every week. You've done it once since August. I deep cleaned the bathroom, grocery shopped, scheduled your dentist appointment, bought your mother's birthday gift, organized the closet renovation, coordinated with the contractor, and maintained the household calendar. So you kept a list. His voice was flat. You actually kept a scorecard of our marriage. I kept data, I corrected, because data doesn't lie. And the data says I work 45 hours a week at my job and another 20 on our home. You work 50 hours and contribute maybe 3 to the household. But according to your mother, I'm the one failing at marriage. This is insane. He turned away, paced to the window. You sound like you're giving a presentation. Maybe that's the only way you'll listen. I set my phone down. Marcus, I'm drowning. I wake up at 5:47 every morning to make your breakfast while you sleep. I plan meals, maintain the house, manage our social calendar, and somehow still excel at a career that pays me $140,000 a year. And it's still not enough, because I didn't make pot roast. You're being dramatic. The dismissal cracked something open in my chest. Am I? Then explain to me why your mother thinks she can come into my home and tell me I'm not a real wife. Explain why you didn't defend me. Not once. You just sat there and let her list my failures like she was conducting a performance review. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, tired, almost vulnerable. She's my mother, Amara. She sacrificed everything to raise me. She built a business from nothing after Dad died. She put me through law school. I can't just throw her out because she has opinions. I'm not asking you to throw her out. I'm asking you to see me. I moved closer to him, desperate for him to understand. I'm asking you to recognize that her opinions are systematically dismantling my sense of worth. Every visit is another reminder that I'm not enough, not domestic enough, not focused enough on your needs, not ready enough for children I never said I wanted in the first place. You don't want children? His voice sharpened. Since when? Since always. The words burst out of me. I never said I wanted kids. Marcus. You assumed. Your mother assumed. Everyone assumed that of course I'd want to give up my career to raise your children. But no one ever asked me. He stared at me like I'd just confessed to a crime. We talked about this before we got married. No, you talked about it. You painted this picture of a future with kids and Sunday dinners and soccer games, and I didn't contradict you because I loved you and I thought maybe I'd want it eventually, but I don't. Or at least, I don't want it the way your mother wants it, with me as the primary caretaker while you continue your career uninterrupted.
So what? Marcus's voice turned cold. You just want to work forever? Climb some corporate ladder? That's more important than a family? Why does it have to be a choice? I heard the desperation in my voice. Why can't I have both? Why do you get to have both? But I have to sacrifice? Because someone has to prioritize the home. Someone has to be present, he was shouting now. My mom did it. She balanced everything. Your mom was widowed, I interrupted. She didn't have a choice. She built that business out of necessity, and she spent your entire life teaching you that her sacrifice was noble. And it was. But that doesn't mean I have to repeat her performance. Marcus looked at me like I'd slapped him. Don't talk about my mother like that. I'm not criticizing her. I'm criticizing a system that made her believe her only value was in service, and I'm criticizing the fact that she's trying to impose that same system on me. Maybe, Marcus said quietly, she's just trying to protect her son from a wife who cares more about presentations than her marriage. The words hung between us, brutal and deliberate. I felt something inside me go very still. Get out, I said. What? Get out. Go to your mother's. Go to a hotel. I don't care, but I can't look at you right now. This is my house too. Then I'll leave. I grabbed my keys, my purse. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady, clear. I'll go to Jasmine's. We can talk when I'm not this angry, because if we keep going, I'm going to say things we can't take back. I was at the door when Marcus spoke again. If you walk out that door, you're proving her right. You're proving you're not committed to this marriage. I turned back to him. This man I'd loved. This man I'd reshaped myself to accommodate. This man who'd just reduced 3 years of my emotional labor to a single, missed dinner. No, I said clearly. If I walk out this door, I'm proving that I have enough self-respect to leave a conversation where I'm not being heard. There's a difference. I left. Jasmine's apartment in Wicker Park was the opposite of my brownstone. Small, cluttered, filled with plants and art and the comfortable chaos of someone who lived for herself. She took one look at my face when she opened the door at 10:37 p.m. and, wordlessly, handed me a glass of wine. Tell me, she said. So I did. The presentation, the missing dinner, Patricia's real wife comment, Marcus's defense of his mother, his dismissal of my career, his assumption about children I'd never agreed to have, the data I'd been tracking, the scorecard he'd mocked. Jasmine listened without interrupting, her dark eyes sharp with understanding. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then, "Can I show you something?" She pulled out her laptop, navigated to a spreadsheet. "This is my household division of labor with Derek, her boyfriend of 5 years. We update it quarterly: cooking, cleaning, bills, social planning, emotional labor, pet care. We track hours and adjust based on our work schedules. When he got promoted last year and started traveling more, we hired a cleaning service because neither of us had capacity. When I was studying for my CPA, he picked up more of the household tasks. It's not romantic, it's not spontaneous, but it's fair." I stared at the spreadsheet. Color-coded, meticulously maintained, utterly practical. "You think I'm crazy for tracking," I said. "I think you're smart for having evidence. Because here's what I learned. Men don't see invisible labor until you make it visible. And some men don't want to see it even then. Because seeing it means acknowledging their privilege. Marcus isn't what? Benefiting from a system where his career is default important and yours is conditional? Where his mother's love is contingent on you performing domesticity while he performs nothing?" Jasmine leaned forward. "Amara, you're brilliant. You manage complex financial instruments that most people can't even understand. But you've been managing your marriage like it's a negotiation you're destined to lose." "I love him," I said weakly. "I know. But does he love you? Or does he love the version of you that makes his life easier?" The question sat between us, heavy and unavoidable. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "You're overreacting. Come home and we'll talk like adults." I showed Jasmine the message. "Like adults," she read aloud. "Because walking away from someone who won't hear you is childish. But demanding your wife cook dinner after a career-making presentation is mature leadership." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "What do I do? What do you want to do?" I thought about my brownstone, beautiful, suffocating, filled with Patricia's choices. I thought about my mornings, my careful choreography of breakfast and appearance and performance. I thought about the VP track, finally within reach, and the unspoken expectation that I'd give it up for children I didn't want. I thought about the woman I'd been before Marcus, the woman who'd left Nigeria at 19 with a scholarship and a dream, who'd worked 2 jobs through college, who'd built a career through sheer competence and refusal to quit. That woman wouldn't have tolerated a scorecard that didn't add up. When had I lost her? I said slowly, to stop performing. I want to stop making myself smaller so other people feel comfortable. I want a marriage where I'm a partner, not a project manager constantly managing everyone's expectations except my own." "Then that's what you ask for," Jasmine said simply. "And if he can't give it to you, you have your answer." My phone buzzed again. Another text. "Mom wants to apologize. She didn't mean to upset you. Can we all have dinner this weekend and sort this out?" I looked at Jasmine. "She wants to apologize by scheduling another performance review?" "Of course she does. That's how control works. She creates the crisis, waits for you to exhaust yourself, then offers reconciliation on her terms. And Marcus enables it because it's easier than examining his own complicity." I set down my phone, turned it face down on the coffee table. "I'm not going back tonight," I decided. Maybe not tomorrow either. I need space to think, without Marcus or Patricia or anyone else telling me what I should feel. "You can stay here as long as you need," Jasmine said. "Bedroom's yours. Take a breath. Figure out what you actually want, not what you've been told to want." I slept that night in Jasmine's guest room, surrounded by silence and possibility. For the first time in 3 years, I woke up without an alarm, without a breakfast to make, without the weight of someone else's expectations pressing down on my chest. It felt like oxygen after years of holding my breath. And I realized I'd been so busy trying to be a good wife that I'd forgotten how to be myself. The question was whether Marcus would love the woman I actually was, or whether he'd only ever loved the performance. I didn't go home for 3 days. The first day, Marcus texted every 2 hours. Apologies mixed with frustration, mixed with attempts at negotiation. Can we talk? This is ridiculous. Mom feels terrible. I miss you. I responded once. I need time to think. Please respect that. The second day, Patricia texted, Dear, I may have overstepped. Marcus is miserable. Whatever I said that hurt you, I apologize. Family is too important for pride. I didn't respond. Because here's what I'd learned about Patricia's apologies. They always contained an escape hatch. Whatever I said meant she didn't actually know, or want to know, what she'd done wrong. Too important for pride meant my boundaries were ego, not self-preservation. The third day, I got a call from Marcus's Aunt Teresa, his father's sister. We'd met maybe 5 times. She lived in Boston, taught sociology at Northeastern, and had a reputation in the family as difficult, which I was learning meant won't perform the expected role. I heard you threw Patricia out, Teresa said without preamble. Good for you. I almost dropped my phone. Excuse me? Marcus called me looking for advice on how to fix you. I told him the problem wasn't you. It was his inability to see his own privilege. He didn't like that. She laughed, dry and knowing. Want to have coffee? I'm in Chicago for a conference. I think we should talk. We met at a cafe in Logan Square, far enough from my neighborhood that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. Teresa was 60, silver-haired like Patricia but cut short and practical, dressed in jeans and a university sweatshirt. She ordered black coffee and got straight to the point. Patricia did to you what she tried to do to me, Teresa said. When my brother was alive, she and I were cordial. After he died, she became singular. Everything was about Marcus. Everything was about maintaining control through the illusion of sacrifice. She did sacrifice, I said, defensive despite myself. She raised Marcus alone, built that business. She did. And she's held it over his head ever since. Teresa stirred her coffee with deliberate precision. Here's what Marcus doesn't know, because Patricia rewrote the history. My brother had a life insurance policy. A good one. $600,000. Patricia used it to expand the business, but she told Marcus she built it from nothing through pure determination. She wasn't destitute. She was strategic. The words landed like stones, disturbing the surface of everything I thought I knew. She had help, Teresa continued. My mother watched Marcus after school. I paid for his summer camps when Patricia said money was tight. Our brother sent checks every Christmas. But Patricia's narrative was always lone wolf resilience. The sacrificial mother. It gave her power, moral authority that Marcus couldn't question. Why are you telling me this?
Because you're the first woman Marcus has dated who has her own power, her own money, her own identity. Teresa leaned forward. Patricia can't control you through guilt the way she controlled him, so she's trying to control you through shame, making you feel inadequate as a wife, so you'll spend your energy trying to prove her wrong instead of building your own life. I thought about the 3 years of performance, the breakfasts, the careful management of Patricia's expectations, the way I'd twisted myself into smaller and smaller shapes, trying to fit her definition of acceptable. It's working, I admitted quietly. Only if you let it. Teresa pulled out her phone, showed me a photo. This is my wife, Carolina. We've been married 22 years. We split everything 50-50. Housework, finances, emotional labor. We both have careers we love. Neither of us gave up anything to be together because partnership isn't about sacrifice. It's about collaboration. I stared at the photo. 2 women on a hiking trail, wind-blown and grinning, their arms around each other with the ease of equals. Marcus doesn't know how to collaborate, I said. He only knows how to be served or to serve. His mother trained him that way. Yes, but he's not 15 anymore. He's a grown man who chose to marry you, then expected you to become his mother. Teresa's voice was gentle but unsparing. The question is, are you willing to do the work of teaching him a different model? Or are you done? The question I'd been avoiding for 3 days, maybe for 3 years, sat between us like a third presence. I don't know, I said honestly. I love him, but I don't know if I love who I've become trying to love him. Then that's your answer. Teresa squeezed my hand. Whatever you decide, know this. You are not the problem. Your career is not the problem. Your boundaries are not the problem. The problem is a system that taught Marcus his comfort matters more than your humanity. And until he's willing to dismantle that system, you'll keep performing while he keeps consuming. I went home that afternoon, not to the brownstone, to my office. I'd been avoiding it, afraid that my personal crisis would contaminate my professional triumph. But sitting at my desk, surrounded by the financial models I'd built, the deals I'd closed, the evidence of my competence, I felt something click into place. This was real. This was mine. This was the life I'd built through skill and persistence and refusal to accept less than I deserved. Why had I been willing to accept less than I deserved at home? Robert Chen found me there at 4 p.m., working through Q4 projections. Heard the Henderson deal is officially closed, he said, leaning against my doorframe. Congratulations, Vice President Okonkwo. I looked up. What? The partnership voted this morning. You're being promoted to Vice President, effective December 1st. 20% raise, equity package, your own team. He smiled. You earned it. Hell, you earned it 3 years ago, but we're slow learners. Vice President. The goal I'd been chasing since I joined Morrison & Webb 6 years ago. The validation that my work mattered, that my expertise had value, that I'd built something that couldn't be diminished by someone else's expectations. Thank you, I managed. You okay? Robert asked, his expression shifting to concern. You look complicated, I finished. It's been a complicated week. He nodded slowly. For what it's worth? Some of us have been watching you kill yourself trying to do 2 full-time jobs, this one and whatever you're managing at home. You're the first one in every morning, last one out at night. You never take vacation. You apologize for things that aren't your fault. He paused. I don't know what's going on in your personal life, but I hope this promotion reminds you that you're exceptional at what you do. And that's worth protecting. After he left, I sat in my office and cried, not from sadness, from relief, from the recognition that at least here, in this space, my value was quantifiable. My contributions were acknowledged. My worth wasn't contingent on how well I performed invisible labor. Then I called Marcus. Can you meet me at home? I asked when he answered. We need to talk. Really talk. Marcus was already there when I arrived at 7 p.m. He'd cleaned the kitchen, or tried to. Dishes were washed but stacked haphazardly. The counters were wiped down. He'd even bought flowers, sitting in a vase on the dining table. The gesture was sweet. It was also 3 years late. You're home, he said. Relief flooding his face. He moved to hug me, but I stepped back. I need to say something, and I need you to listen without interrupting. Can you do that? He nodded. Wary. We sat at the table, Patricia's table in Patricia's house, surrounded by Patricia's choices, but this time, I wasn't performing. I got promoted today, I started. Vice President. It's what I've been working toward since before we met. That's amazing, babe. I'm not finished. I kept my voice level. I got promoted because I'm exceptional at my job. I manage complex portfolios, lead teams, close deals that generate millions in revenue. At work, my value is clear, quantifiable, respected. Marcus waited. At home, My value is conditional. It depends on whether I cook the right meals, maintain the right appearance, defer to your mother's opinions, prioritize your comfort over my career. I've spent 3 years trying to be enough wife, enough homemaker, enough of whatever Patricia decided a real wife should be, and it's still not enough, because the standard keeps moving. I never said you weren't enough. You didn't have to say it. You showed it. I pulled out my phone, opened my notes. I tracked our household labor for 6 months. I wanted data because feelings can be dismissed, but data is objective. Would you like to see it? His jaw tightened, but he nodded. I walked him through it. Hours spent cooking, cleaning, planning, organizing, managing. The invisible labor of maintaining a household that he enjoyed but never acknowledged. The mental load of remembering his mother's birthday, his dental appointments, when we needed groceries, what bills were due. You contribute 3 hours a week, I said. I contribute 20 on top of our full-time jobs, but when I miss one dinner because of a career-defining presentation, your mother tells me I'm not a real wife, and you agree with her. I didn't agree. You didn't defend me. Same thing. I closed my phone. Here's what I've realized, Marcus. You don't want a wife. You want a replacement mother. Someone to manage your domestic life while you focus on your career, and your actual mother is training me to accept that role by systematically destroying my sense of worth whenever I prioritize myself. That's not fair. My mom loves you. Your mom loves the idea of who I could become if I'd just give up my inconvenient ambitions. She doesn't love me. I met his eyes. And I'm not sure you do either. The words hung between us, brutal and necessary. Marcus's face went pale. How can you say that? I love you. I married you. You married a version of me that you thought would evolve into your mother. Independent enough to have her own income, but traditional enough to make that income secondary to your needs. Smart enough to be interesting, but not ambitious enough to threaten the hierarchy. I leaned forward. But I'm not evolving the way you expected. I'm getting more ambitious, not less. I just made VP. I'm going to make 6 figures soon. I'm going to travel for work. I'm going to have demands on my time that don't accommodate last-minute dinner requests. So what? His voice rose. You just want to abandon the marriage? Focus only on work? No, I want a partnership. An actual partnership where we both contribute equally to our home, where my career matters as much as yours, where your mother doesn't get to define what makes me adequate. I paused, choosing my words carefully. I want a marriage where I'm not performing for your approval. Where I can be myself, ambitious, driven, imperfect, and still be loved. You are loved, Marcus said, but his voice wavered. Then prove it. I pulled a piece of paper from my bag, the spreadsheet Jasmine had shown me, adapted for our life. This is a household division of labor agreement. Everything we do to maintain this house, split equitably based on our work hours. We revisit it monthly. We adjust as needed. We hire help when neither of us has capacity. We make decisions together about children, careers, where we live, how we spend holidays. Marcus stared at the paper like it was a foreign language. You want me to sign a contract about housework? I want you to see the invisible labor you've been consuming without acknowledgement. I want you to understand that managing a home is work, real work, and I've been doing most of it while you've been coasting. I pushed the paper toward him. This is what equality looks like. It's not romantic. It's not spontaneous, but it's fair. He picked up the paper, scanned it. I watched his face shift. Confusion, resistance, something that might have been shame. What about my mom? He asked finally. She's not going to like this. Your mom doesn't live here. She doesn't get a vote. I kept my voice gentle but firm. Marcus, you're 43 years old. You have a mother and a wife, and you've been trying to keep both of us happy by making me perform the role she approves of, but I can't do that anymore. So you have to choose. Do you want a marriage to me? The actual person I am? Or do you want to keep seeking your mother's approval by molding me into her image? The silence stretched. I could see him struggling, the little boy who'd lost his father and clung to his mother's certainty, fighting with the man who'd promised to be my partner. I don't know how to do this, he said finally, his voice breaking. I don't know how to be the husband you need. Neither do I admitted, but I know how to learn. The question is whether you're willing to learn with me, or whether you'd rather keep the system we have. Marcus looked at the spreadsheet, at me, at his hands. Can I think about it? He asked. And that's when I knew. Because can I think about it meant he was weighing whether my happiness was worth the discomfort of change, whether equality was worth disappointing his mother, whether I, the real me, not the performed version, was worth choosing. Yes, I said quietly, but while you think, I'm going to stay at Jasmine's because I can't keep living in a space where I'm not sure I'm wanted for who I actually am. I stood up, grabbed my bag, walked toward the door of the brownstone that had never quite felt like mine. Amara, Marcus called, I do love you. I turned back. I believe you. But love isn't enough if it requires me to disappear. I left him sitting at Patricia's table, surrounded by Patricia's choices, holding a piece of paper that outlined what actual partnership could look like. Whether he'd choose it was up to him, but for the first time in 3 years, I knew what I'd choose if he didn't. I'd choose myself. I lived at Jasmine's for 2 weeks. The first few days, I kept expecting to feel guilty. I'd been trained so thoroughly to prioritize other people's comfort that choosing my own felt selfish, even reckless. But guilt never came. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: clarity. I woke up when my body wanted to wake up. I ate breakfast that I actually enjoyed: avocado toast, fruit, yogurt, instead of cooking elaborate meals for someone else. I went to work and stayed late when projects demanded it, without calculating whether I'd have time to prep dinner. I came home to Jasmine's small, chaotic apartment and felt lighter than I'd felt in Patricia's perfectly appointed brownstone. You're smiling more, Jasmine observed one evening as we cooked together. Actually together, both of us chopping vegetables, sharing the work, making it feel like collaboration instead of performance. I forgot what it felt like to not be managing everyone else's expectations, I admitted. Marcus texted daily. The messages evolved. First came defensiveness. This is extreme. We can work this out without you leaving. Then bargaining. I cleaned the whole house. I bought groceries. I'm trying. Then something that looked like understanding. I talked to Aunt Teresa. She told me things about Mom I didn't know. Can we talk? I didn't respond for a week, not out of cruelty, but because I needed to know who I was without him. The woman who'd left Nigeria at 19 with nothing but ambition and a scholarship, I needed to reconnect with her. The woman who'd built a career through competence and refusal to quit. I needed to remember what she valued. On day 9, Patricia texted, I spoke with Marcus. I understand I overstepped. I'd like to take you to lunch to apologize properly. I stared at that message for an hour. Then I called Teresa. She's trying to regain control, Teresa said immediately. One-on-one lunch, her territory, her terms. She'll apologize just enough to make you feel guilty for having boundaries. Then she'll reestablish her authority through concern. Should I go? That depends. Do you want reconciliation or do you want change? I thought about that question, really sat with it. I want change, I said, but I don't know if she's capable of it. Then test her, Teresa suggested. Respond on your terms. Public place? Witnesses? Time limit. See if she'll meet you as an equal or if she'll only engage when she controls the dynamic. I texted Patricia back. Coffee at Intelligentsia on Randolph, Saturday at 10 a.m., 1 hour. Marcus doesn't need to know. Her response took 3 hours. That works. Patricia arrived exactly on time, impeccably dressed as always, tailored slacks, silk blouse, that same string of pearls. But something in her posture was different, smaller, less certain. We ordered coffee, sat at a table by the window where the November light cut harsh and clear. "Thank you for meeting me," Patricia started. "I'm here to listen," I said. Not warm, not cold, neutral. "You said you wanted to apologize." She took a breath. "I spoke with Teresa. She told me that Marcus called her and that she shared some history with you, financial history I'd kept private." "The life insurance policy?" I said evenly. Patricia's jaw tightened. "That money was to secure Marcus's future. I used it to build something stable for him." "You used it to build a narrative," I corrected gently. "The story of the sacrificial mother who did everything alone. That narrative gave you power, moral authority that Marcus couldn't question, and you've been using that authority to control his choices ever since." She was quiet for a long moment. "You think very strategically, don't you?" "I'm a financial analyst. Strategy is my job. And yet you couldn't strategize your way into being the wife Marcus needed." The words came out sharp, defensive. Then immediately she winced. "I'm sorry." That was unfair. "It was honest," I said. "This is who you are when you're threatened. Someone who built her identity on sacrifice and service and who can't conceive of another model. Someone who sees my career as competition instead of contribution." Patricia's hands trembled slightly around her coffee cup. "I raised Marcus alone. I built a business. I gave him everything. And he chose you, a woman who doesn't need him, who doesn't prioritize him, who keeps a spreadsheet of household chores like marriage is a business transaction." "It is a transaction," I said quietly, "just not the kind you think. Marriage is two people negotiating needs, boundaries, labor, dreams. It requires equity, not sacrifice. But you taught Marcus that love looks like service, that a good wife disappears into her husband's needs. And now you're angry because I refuse to disappear." "I'm not angry," but her voice wavered. "I'm afraid." The admission hung between us, unexpected and raw. "Afraid of what?" I asked. "That I raised him wrong. That everything I thought was strength was actually control. That I turned my son into someone who can't see his own privilege because I made my suffering look like virtue." She met my eyes. "Teresa said the same thing when Marcus called her. She said I'd weaponized my sacrifice, that I'd taught Marcus to consume care without reciprocating it, and she was right. I hadn't expected this. Defensiveness, yes. Manipulation disguised as apology, certainly. But this looked like actual reckoning." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked carefully. "Because Marcus is miserable, not performatively miserable, genuinely lost. He's been sleeping in the guest room. He printed out your spreadsheet and tried to track his contributions. He realized he couldn't list more than an hour a day, and it broke something in him." Patricia's voice cracked. "He asked me if I'd raised him to be helpless, if I'd taught him that being a man meant being served." "What did you tell him?" I told him yes. She wiped her eyes with a napkin, a gesture so uncharacteristically vulnerable that I almost reached for her hand. "I told him I'd raised him to expect what his father had, a wife who managed everything so he could focus on providing. But times changed, you changed, and I didn't know how to adapt, so I tried to make you adapt instead." We sat in silence. The cafe buzzed around us, laptops clicking, conversations flowing, the ordinary rhythm of people living their unexamined lives. "I can't be your daughter-in-law the way you want," I said finally. "I won't cook elaborate dinners after 12-hour workdays. I won't sacrifice my career for children I'm not sure I want. I won't perform domestic perfection to validate your model of womanhood, but I could be your daughter-in-law as myself, ambitious, imperfect, someone who loves your son but won't disappear for him." Patricia nodded slowly. "Can I ask you something?" Yes? Do you still love him? After everything? I thought about Marcus, the man who'd made me laugh on our third date, who'd held me when my father died and I couldn't fly home for the funeral, who'd celebrated every promotion, every achievement, even as he unconsciously expected me to downplay them, the man who'd been shaped by his mother's trauma into someone who didn't know how to be an equal partner, but who might be willing to learn. I love who he could become, I said honestly. I don't know if I love who he is right now. That's what I'm trying to figure out. That's fair, Patricia said quietly. Then, I won't interfere anymore. With how you run your home, how you manage your career, what choices you make about children. I'll stop offering opinions disguised as concern, but I need something from you in return. What? Patience. Not with me, with him. He's trying to unlearn 40 years of conditioning. It won't be smooth, he'll backslide. But if you're willing to teach him what partnership actually looks like, I think he'll meet you there. Eventually, I considered this. The woman across from me wasn't offering friendship. She wasn't promising transformation. She was offering a truce. Conditional, fragile, but real. I can work with that, I said. Marcus came to Jasmine's apartment that night. I'd texted him after my coffee with Patricia. Ready to talk? Come to Jasmine's at 7. He arrived with takeout, Thai food from my favorite place, the one I'd mentioned on our second date 4 years ago. He remembered. We sat on Jasmine's couch. She'd tactfully disappeared to give us privacy, and for the first time in our marriage, we talked without performing. I printed out your spreadsheet, Marcus started. The household labor one. I tried to add my contributions. I couldn't get past 3 hours a week without lying to myself. Okay, I said, waiting. I called my mom, asked her if she'd raised me to be helpless. She said yes. His voice broke slightly. She said she'd taught me that being a man meant being provided for, and that I'd been expecting you to be her. And she was right, Amara. I didn't see it. I genuinely thought I was contributing because I paid bills and occasionally cleaned up after myself. I didn't see all the invisible work you were doing, the planning, the remembering, the mental load of managing our entire life. Why didn't you see it? I asked, not accusatory, genuinely curious. Because I never had to. My whole life, someone was doing it for me. Mom, when I was growing up. Then you. It was just there, like air. He ran his hands through his hair. Aunt Teresa asked me a question that gutted me. She said, if Amara disappeared tomorrow, would you know how to maintain your own life? And the answer was no. I wouldn't know when we needed groceries or when bills were due or how to cook anything beyond scrambled eggs. I'd been consuming your labor without even acknowledging it existed. I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness yet, but recognition. I read about emotional labor, he continued, mental load, the invisible work women do that men don't see because we've been socialized not to see it. And I realized I've been that guy, the guy who thinks he's progressive because he helps with dishes, but doesn't understand that helping implies it's your job and I'm being generous by contributing. So what changed? I asked. You left? He met my eyes. For the first time in 3 years, I had to manage my own life. And it was exhausting. Grocery shopping took 2 hours because I didn't have a list. I burned dinner 3 times. I forgot my dentist appointment. I realized the house doesn't just maintain itself, you maintain it. And I'd been letting you. We sat with that admission. I can't go back to how things were, I said carefully. Even if you've had this revelation, I can't trust it yet. People backslide. Old patterns reassert themselves. Your mother stops interfering for a month, then starts again because you're stressed and she wants to help. I know. Marcus pulled out a piece of paper, the spreadsheet I'd given him, filled out in his handwriting. So I did this. Divided everything 50-50 based on our work hours, scheduled weekly check-ins, and I found a therapist who specializes in gender dynamics in marriage. I've had 2 sessions. I'd like you to come to the 3rd one if you're willing. I looked at the spreadsheet. Really looked. He'd tracked everything, not just obvious chores, but the invisible work. The mental load of remembering, planning, coordinating. He'd broken it down by hours, by equity, by fairness. It wasn't perfect, but it was evidence of effort. "What about your mother?" I asked. I told her she doesn't get to comment on how we run our home, that you're my partner, not her project, that if she wants to be in our lives, she needs to respect your choices, including your career, your boundaries, and whatever we decide about children's chores, Sal. He paused. She didn't like it, but she agreed, because she knows if she doesn't, she loses both of us. "And what do you want?" I asked. "Not what your mother wants, not what you think you're supposed to want. What do you actually want from this marriage?" Marcus was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was stripped of performance, raw with honesty. "I want a partner, a real partner. Someone who challenges me, who has her own ambitions, who doesn't shrink to make me comfortable. I want you, Amara. Not the version you were performing, the version who makes VP and stays late for presentations and keeps data on inequality because she refuses to accept systems that don't serve her." He reached for my hand. "I want to learn how to be worthy of that woman, even if it takes years, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it means disappointing my mother." I felt tears prick my eyes. Not from relief, from recognition. This was the man I'd married. Under all the conditioning, all the patterns, all the expectations, this was the person who'd chosen me. "I want that too," I whispered. "But Marcus, I need you to understand. I will not sacrifice my career. I will not prioritize your comfort over my ambitions. I will not perform domestic perfection to validate anyone's expectations. If we do this, it's as equals. Messy, imperfect, negotiated, equals." "I know," he said, "and I'm scared I'll fail, that I'll backslide into old patterns, that I won't be good enough at this new model." "Then we fail together," I said, "and we adjust. And we keep trying. That's what partnership is." We held each other on Jasmine's couch, surrounded by her plants and her art and her comfortable chaos, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I was holding my husband, not performing for my audience. I moved back home 3 days later, not because Marcus convinced me, but because I'd figured out who I was without him, and I liked her enough to see if she could exist with him too. The first month was hard. Marcus tried, genuinely tried. But 40 years of conditioning doesn't disappear overnight. He'd forget to check the grocery list. He'd start a load of laundry, then leave it in the washer for 2 days. He'd plan to cook dinner, then order takeout because cooking was harder than it looked. But he kept trying, and more importantly, he kept acknowledging when he fell short. "I dropped the ball on groceries. That's on me. What do we need to make this system work better?" We hired a cleaning service, split the remaining work according to the spreadsheet, adjusting monthly, went to therapy together, where we learned language for things we'd never been able to name: mental load, emotional labor, weaponized incompetence, default parent, the invisible architecture of inequality. Patricia kept her distance, mostly. She still had opinions, but she'd learned to preface them with, "This is just my perspective," instead of stating them as universal truth. On Thanksgiving, she watched me leave early for a client call and said, "That Henderson deal put you on the partner track." That's remarkable, Amara. Not quite warmth, but acknowledgement. Progress. 6 months later, Marcus and I sat in our kitchen, still Patricia's style, but we'd started making it ours, slowly, deliberately, and reviewed our spreadsheet. "We're pretty close to 50-50, he said. Surprise in his voice. "We are," I agreed. "How does it feel?" Exhausting, he admitted, but fair. For the first time, I understand what you've been managing all along. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I reached across the table, took his hand. I'm sorry I waited so long to demand you see it. Why did you? He asked. You're brilliant, strategic. Why did you accept inequality for so long? I thought about that, about the girl who'd left Nigeria with dreams and determination, about the woman who'd built a career through competence and grit, about how I'd applied that same determination to being a good wife without questioning what that meant. Because I thought love required sacrifice, I said finally. I thought partnership meant making myself smaller so you could be bigger. I thought if I could just be perfect enough, cook well enough, organize efficiently enough, manage invisibly enough, I'd finally be seen as valuable. You were always valuable, Marcus said quietly. I know that now. But I had to leave to remember it. I squeezed his hand. That's the thing about systems of inequality. They're so normalized that even the people being harmed by them internalize the logic. I was brilliant at work because I could see the systems clearly, but I was drowning at home because I couldn't see that the system itself was broken. Marcus nodded, and I couldn't see it because the system served me. Exactly. I smiled, sad and knowing. But you're seeing it now. That's what matters. We sat in our kitchen now truly, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the peace of performance where everything is controlled and perfect, but the peace of authenticity, where imperfection is expected and equality is negotiated, and love is measured not in sacrifice but in seeing each other clearly. I still work long hours. I still chase promotions. I still prioritize my career because it's mine, built through effort and expertise and refusal to quit. But now, Marcus prioritizes his share of our home, not as a favor to me, but as his responsibility to us. And Patricia? She's learning, slowly, that her son's happiness doesn't require my diminishment, that strength looks different than she was taught, that the next generation gets to build something new. I learned that hunger comes in many forms. The kind that gnaws at your stomach is the easiest to name. The kind that hollows out your sense of worth takes years to recognize. But the kind that drives you to reclaim yourself, that's the hunger that saves you. My name is Amara. I'm a vice president at Morrison & Webb. I manage 8-figure portfolios. I have a marriage that's messy and imperfect and equal. And for the first time in years, I have myself back. That's the real happy ending. Not the perfect marriage, but the reclaimed self. Not the approval of others, but the recognition of your own worth. Not the performance of adequacy, but the courage to demand equity. The morning after I refused to make pot roast, my mother-in-law found her son's plate empty, and I found myself full. Full of clarity, of boundaries, of the understanding that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to disappear. I don't cook elaborate breakfasts anymore. Marcus and I trade off. Sometimes it's scrambled eggs with cream. Sometimes it's protein bars and coffee. Sometimes it's nothing at all, because we both had early meetings and life is imperfect, but it's ours, negotiated, equal, real, and that's everything. Here's what I want you to understand. Systems of inequality persist because they're invisible to the people they serve. Marcus couldn't see my labor because he'd never had to perform it. Patricia couldn't imagine a different model because sacrifice had become her identity. But invisibility isn't inevitability. When you name the pattern, when you quantify the imbalance, when you refuse to continue performing unpaid labor, you disrupt the system. Not through anger, though anger has its place, but through strategic clarity, through the simple, revolutionary act of saying, this doesn't work for me anymore. The spreadsheet wasn't petty, it was evidence. The boundaries weren't selfish, they were survival. The demand for equity wasn't unreasonable, it was overdue. And the choice to leave, even temporarily, wasn't abandonment. It was the assertion that my presence in that marriage was a gift, not a given. That partnership requires mutual investment. That love without respect is just performance art. If you're reading this and recognizing yourself in my story, if you're the one making breakfast while your partner sleeps, managing invisible labor while being told you're not doing enough, succeeding at work while failing at home by standards you never agreed to, know this: you are not the problem. The system is the problem, and systems can be changed, but change requires courage. The courage to stop performing, to demand visibility for your labor, to refuse negotiations where your humanity is the bargaining chip. It requires the willingness to walk away from relationships that only work when you disappear. And it requires the clarity to recognize that you deserve partnership, not performance reviews, equity, not endless accommodation, love that sees you, not love that consumes you. The pot roast I didn't make became the catalyst for reclaiming myself. What will yours be? What do you think about this story? Have you ever felt like you were performing a role instead of living your truth? Have you tracked invisible labor in your own relationships? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your experiences and what helped you find your way back to yourself. If this story resonated with you, please like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's drowning in expectations and forgotten how to breathe. Someone who needs permission to choose themselves. And subscribe for more stories about reclaiming your worth, setting boundaries, and building relationships based on equity, not sacrifice. Remember, you are not required to shrink so others can feel comfortable. Your ambitions are not negotiable. Your worth is not conditional on how well you serve. The most radical act of love is refusing to disappear. Thank you for listening. Until next time, keep choosing yourself. Keep demanding equity. Keep refusing to perform. Because your life, your real life, not the performance, is waiting for you.